pandemic.
Could you just repeat your question for us one more time?
Yes, I'm wondering what the UN hopes that this report can accomplish at this moment. You know, at a time when the world is in the midst of battling a global pandemic, does the world have the funds and/or commitment to address this issue at the moment?
Okay, so a question about political commitment and financial resources. So I'd like to address that to Claudia and then Phumzile, perhaps Dr. Tedros as well. Claudia?
It's a difficult question. I mean, clearly there are many competing priorities, but it's a circular situation. We know that you know, violence, not doing anything about violence also has costs. There has been estimates for some countries, for example, the UK, that it's between 1% and 2% of GDP. And that's just taking tangible costs like health services or legal services, or, you know, it's not taking into account the costs in terms of human suffering and human lives. There's also the issue of continuation of this violence. We know that being exposed to violence growing up as a child also is associated with either perpetuating or being in an abusive relationship in later life. So everything has costs, but also not doing anything, not doing something about violence has also a huge cost, both human and social and economic. And I think that these numbers really need to juggle, to you know, sort of shake us up into the urgency of acting. And in some ways, I think that COVID-19 pandemic offers us unfortunately, an unfortunate and unwelcome, but still an opportunity. We are talking about rebuilding better. We're talking about, you know, new models, economic models that are not so much strongly based on inequality. So I think there is also an opportunity to rethink some of these social and health issues and some of the drivers of these social and health problems, and think how we can learn and do better.
Thanks, Claudia. Phumzile, would you
add something, please?
No, please go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say that, you know, the reports and the data make us conscious, and it's important that the team continues to produce these. But I think we shouldn't forget that, you know, these behaviors start at a young age, and that's where the investments must come in. If you're running a very comprehensive basic education curriculum, already in there, we must socialize boys to start respecting their own bodies and respecting the bodies of their mates or their schoolmates in class. There's a lot that communities can do on their own without looking at big resources, lots of resources that governments need to put in. You know, we're struggling now with the downstream effects of having done nothing when we were bringing children up. It's our role as parents to socialize children, and boys and girls, in different ways. So already that's an investment. Then schools can deal with these things differently than other people in society, you know, and parents must also take responsibility. You know, you can't have a situation where parents say, oh, we don't do it, teachers must teach children about sexuality education. That is wrong, because we not taking responsibility for bringing up our own children. So I don't often believe that you need lots of money to deal with what is a societal issue that's about how do we deal with each other as people. And when we grew up, we knew that if we did something wrong, the father next door could beat me up or could, you know, like discipline me. So that fabric of society is broken. But there are many other things that are emerging in society at a community level that we can use to reintegrate the old values that really sustain well-being between men and women, and boys and their fathers, girls and their mothers, and communities. So there's a lot to be done. It's not just about let's get governments to give us more and more money, you know. Why does a man beat up his partner, and why should we then give him money to do something different? And I am simplifying it, but really and truly it's about a deeply held beliefs of what the value of the people you have in your life is. So I just want to highlight that it's not only about money and reports, it's about us as a people and how we treat ourselves, others, and those we say we love. So I hope, we can learn from COVID, which has shown that women were more exposed to violence, which means they were locked up with partners who clearly didn't have respect for them and took out the anger on them. There's something wrong there. And governments can't prescribe what you do in your house. Governments can help you, but you as a partner can take responsibility for the well-being of your family. Thank you. Over.
Thank you for those important observations, Dr. Nono. And we also have Dr. Lynn Marie who would like to add. Please go ahead.
Yes, so in relation to the COVID and funding on violence against women programs, I think this is, we have to remember that violence against women, as has been said earlier, predates COVID, and it will continue long after COVID-19, and it has generational impacts. So besides COVID shining a spotlight on this, violence against women of pandemic proportions, it also has highlighted the lack of funding and the lack of support to services for women, both response services and prevention services. And given the life course impacts of violence against women on young people, but older women as well, I think it is a priority, and COVID-19 has highlighted this. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Phumzile, would you like to add anything?
In building back better, which is what we are now talking about and engaging in as part of dealing with COVID, ending gender-based violence, which we refer to as a shadow pandemic, is part of the package. So when we're talking about the resources being scarce and dealing with the reconstruction as a necessity to overcome the impact of the pandemic, gender-based violence is part of what needs to be addressed as we come out of the pandemic. And we do need to actively, including the media, lobby and make sure that gender-responsive building back better is what this is about. Because if we're going to build back better and neglect the issues that have affected women who we already say have been affected disproportionately, this will be building back badly. So it's an integral part of building back better to pick on these gender-inclined injustices that have been exposed by the pandemic. In generation equality also, we are taking on the fundraising for more work to be done on this, but we are really wanting to see that national governments also take this as part of their reconstruction, just like they'll be rebuilding back their economies, rebuilding back their digital infrastructure. Fighting for ending gender-based violence is part and parcel of that scenario. Thank you.
Thank you, Phumzile. And I'd like to come to the end of this briefing, but before I do, I'll hand the floor back to Dr. Tedros for final remarks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Maybe instead of final remarks, I'd like to comment on the last question. and in agreement with what our colleagues said. The pandemic has actually exposed the serious problems that our world has. The level of poverty, the level of inequality, and the damage on our planet, the climate change, and violence against women. Almost all indicators were found to be worse than what we used to even think. So it has shown us that our problems are really deep. And for that, as Fumzile said, what the world is saying now is we have to build back better. And in building back better, it has to be comprehensive, meaning it should, we don't have a choice between this and that. The major challenges that we have, they have to be addressed together. So in building back better, I think this should be one of the major areas so violence could stop. And even to address this, I have said it in my speech, we need to have economic tools, we need to have educational tools, we need to have social tools, we need to have clinical tools, and also above all, there should be ownership by the whole society and treat it as such. So it will not be a choice like I think Claudia said between this and that. We need to have a comprehensive approach to address the major challenges that we have as a society. Thank you, Carla, and back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tedros, for those remarks. So we've now had a good hour together, and we've come to the end of questions from journalists today. Let me remind you that the audio files and the remarks of the Director General will be sent after this briefing. The press release to launch this report on violence against women estimates has also been posted online at www.who.int since the embargo has now been lifted. And in that press release, you'll also find a link to the full report. If you have any other follow-up questions, please direct those to media inquiries with an I at who.int. And I'd just like to thank all of our participants, all the media who asked questions today, our speakers for today's press conference, which is now closed.